Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today I bring you an alternative world, a bizarre world of Shorty September right out of my shelves. Let me explain. So, when I put together my Shorty September TBR, first I worked on the 30 stories in 30 days, and then I collected some short story collections from my shelves and the library or my TBR cart, and I think I bought one. And then I thought, well, I also want to read a couple of short novels. Oh no, I only have one short novel that I haven't read yet. So I bought a couple of books. Well, now that I have this immense TBR that I'm very happy with and I'm very excited about those books, I thought to myself, I bet that you have some other short novels lurking around in these shelves that you have completely forgotten about. Maybe you read them in the past. There might be something you never read. What if I tried to put together an alternative Shorty September pile? These could be ideas for somebody else. Could be a walk down memory lane. I don't know what this is going to be, but I went around and gathered up a bunch of books. And I had a few parameters. I said it could be short novels or nonfiction, no short story collections, no plays, and no poetry collections, because I had to narrow down the field somehow. And I realized I had a whole lot of plays, but that's another story and another upcoming reading project. But so I just gathered mainly novels. I think there's one or two nonfiction books, and it had to be under 200 pages, and it had to be something I had never talked about on the channel before. If I've read it and talked about it, DNF'd it, mentioned it, put it in a list and didn't read it, whatever, if I remembered it all ever talking about that particular book, disqualified. It's okay if I talked about the author, but it was another book, but I couldn't have that exact book. So that some books went back to the shelves because they got disqualified, because slowly, the sands of the hourglass shifted around, and I remembered talking about them at some point in another video somewhere in the past 2 years that I've been on BookTube. So if I bring up another book in this pile and you have a better memory than me and you say, Angelia, you talked about that book before, I believe you, because that's my brain. So that's what the topic is. Forgotten books, not necessarily obscure in the whole realm of literature, but they become obscured from view, obstructed view, because they're just sitting on my shelves, but I wasn't noticing them. So we're going to look at them today, and hopefully this will be fun to go back through these. All right, the first one, not obscure whatsoever, a famous existential novel, The Stranger by Albert Camus. So here's the story, and a long-running theme today is going to be very old, yellowy, smelly, musty books. So some of these are really from way back. So I got this book when I was a teenager. I mean, okay, let's just appreciate the cover first. So the first thing that happened was I saw the book, and I instantly thought of, I'll try to find a picture, I thought of the Ashes to Ashes video, one of my favorite David Bowie songs, and Steve Strange's hat. And anyway, that's what I thought of. The other thing, the reason why I ever got this book to begin with as a teenager was that was when I first really got into The Cure. And on this album, there's a song called Killing an Arab, which I thought was rather startling and disturbing and provocative. And then I found out that it was inspired by this novel. And then I became aware of existentialism, and I was intrigued. And so I went on this little reading rampage of reading some existential authors. It was a very hit and miss affair. Some of it I didn't get at all, or I didn't like it, and some of it I thought it was cool. Anyway, that's how all of this and this book came into my life. I've never had any desire to reread it, but I am never going to get rid of it because it is a classic and it's a memory, and it just has this fantastically bizarre cover. All right, the next book, again, a very popular book that is frequently mentioned on BookTube, and I have read it, but I don't think I ever, not in the time space of being on BookTube, and I don't think I've ever talked about it. The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. It's a fictional imagination of the Queen of England suddenly becoming a voracious reader. And another book, If anybody has read The Clothes They Stood Up In, let me know if that is a good book, because I saw that book in my mother's bookcase and I thought about borrowing it, but I didn't, but I was intrigued. Here's two books I found in the shelves. I have mentioned the African fiction class before that I took a million years ago, and it's the class that keeps on giving because books from that class keep coming up as appropriate for tags and reading projects. They have sat dormant for years, but I've been rereading them, some of them in the past year or so. So here are two of them that I'm intrigued anew by. This one sounds very surreal. The Palm Wine Drinkard, the Palm Wine, can I say it? The Palm Wine Drinkard by Amos Tutuola. Both of these are Nigerian authors. And this, it says, drawing on the Yoruba oral folktale tradition and embellishing his tale with strong mythical and psychological implications, Tutuola describes the odyssey of a devoted palm wine drinker through a nightmare of fantastic adventure. And just flipping through it, it looks very surreal and strange. And then this one's more realistic. The Bride Price by Buchi Emecheta. These books have just the most fantastic covers. I might have pulled this out one time when we were talking about covers. I don't know. I think this is a story of somebody who wants to marry someone that was not approved, and then something bad's going to happen. I know I read it, but it was the 80s. It's a long time ago. Which brings me to my next section, which is the 80s. And the next several books are books that I know that I read and really liked back in the 80s, and they may or may not stand the test of time. Some I think will more than others. So first of all, we have Roddy Doyle with The Commitments. Now, I know I talked about Roddy Doyle before, and I think I've even talked about other books. There's a trio. It's called the Berrytown Trio or Trilogy, and it's The Commitments, The Van, and The Snapper. Somehow I'm missing my copy of The Snapper, but the three of them together are really great comic novels. Now, not all of his books are funny. He has some really dark material too, and he has some more political material as well. But this particular trio centers on members of a certain family in Ireland, and they're full of just a lot of life and humor, and they're very vibrant. And in this one, there is a group that forms a rock band, and the book is almost entirely in dialogue. And so I know people are still talking about this and discovering it and enjoying it. So I don't think this one has gone out of style or become too dated. I think it'd be fun to read again. Then we have Ellen Foster by Kaye Gibbons. This is from my Southern writing heyday, and I just discovered, I had no idea, I just discovered there is a receipt taped in the back, a faded receipt from Borders. Hold on, I've made a startling discovery. I rebought this book. I did read this, it must have been a library book, back in the 80s. I don't know when it became an Oprah book, and the receipt's from 1997, but I know that I read this book way earlier than that because I think my mother gave it to me. What happened to the first copy? I did not read this in the late 90s. I read this in the 80s, unless I am having false memories. And I just read a Philip K. Dick book that's making me question reality and memories. But, okay, why is the receipt taped in the back from Borders? This is the one I have suspicions about. It was really of the moment when it came out, and now I feel like, what would it be like? Would it be nostalgic? Would it just be outdated? How bad would it be? Or would it be good? Would it be outdated in a good way? But it was from 1984, and that's whenever the paperback came out, that's when I got it. I was with it. I was hip. I had to read that book. I wanted to go and live in New York City, and I never did. Okay, let's move on. Here's a Hall of Shamer. 19.6 by Ronald Sukenick. I had to read this for a class. I am not so pretentious that I ran out and just bought this for fun. I had to read this for a class. This professor that I really liked, but he taught the weirdest experimental and deconstructionist kind of stuff. And I just went along for the ride because he was a really fun professor in graduate school. But this book is a hot mess of it's just preposterous. I don't even know. It's not about anything. Here's a passage. And I did not like hunt through for a bad passage. I opened at random. This is what was on the page. And so I stuck a marker in it. The cows. Paul loves to watch the cows over in the meadow next to the settlement. What always strikes him is the way their rears end in rectangles. Rectangled and a little raised, like the sterns of old galleons. Their teats bulge like rubber gloves, their noses are pink, and each has its own geography of black and white. The cows watch him with their dumb eyes, and he likes them because they are dumb. He likes the cows because they're big. He likes the cows because they eat their grass and they're content. He likes the cows because they flick flies away with their tails. He likes the cows because their voices are full and mellow. He likes the cows because of their heavy, slow step. He likes the cows because they run in slow motion. He likes the cows because they sniff the wind. He likes the cows because their drool is beautiful in the sun. He likes the cows because they're at peace. The cows, the cows, the cows. Oh my gosh, I paid for that class. Okay. This was good too. Ordinary Love and Goodwill by Jane Smiley. It was 2 novellas. I really liked the first one. Ordinary Love is one of those stories where everybody gets together for one of those family weekends. I don't know. It's a beach house or a lake house or something like that. And some crap goes down. That's all I remember. But I love those kind of stories. Those are good stuff. Okay, the nonfiction section. Here's a lovely little volume that I went out and bought, and I never ever read it. Here's New York by E.B. White. And let's see. There was a new introduction. He wrote it in 1949. There's a new introduction added in 1999. And I think that I found it at Half Price Books. And I thought it was a lovely little book. And I was going to read it and just feel the vibes of old New York. And I didn't, because I didn't read it. Voltaire's Alphabet of Wit. Also, this is my other nonfiction offering, a pretty little book that was bought for its beauty for $1 in some used bookstore. It is Peter Popper Press. I buy a lot of journals from them. And it's just like this little alphabet that looks like it's going to be funny. Beauty, books, cannibalism, celibacy, divorce, enchantment. But here's my suspicion. I think that just like Candide, it's going to sound potentially more amusing than it actually is going to be. I read a couple of the entries, not so funny. Like the setup and the headings sounds like it's going to be much more entertaining than it really is. I think Voltaire is not as funny as he thinks he is, or maybe it's just not funny anymore. I'm going to keep it because it's cute. And now it's time for the dirty section. I found 2 kind of spicy books. I found Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure by John Cleland, which I also had to read for a class in graduate school. I don't need, what was the class? I don't know, but we had to read this. It's an 18th century. It's basically, the story is about a sex worker, and it's a string of sex scenes strung together in an epistolary fashion. And it's one of those presentations where the narrator she doesn't want to glamorize or, be titillating, but she just has to give you this cautionary tale of all the things she just had to do. And the problem with the story is that it's definitely from the John Cleland's perspective. It's an 18th century man's imagination of a fantasy prostitute who loves her job. So it's not feminist. He managed to write the whole thing, which is very explicit, but without using any actual specific body part words. That was, he somehow, I don't know if he was able to elude the censors by not using the words that triggered censorship, but the whole thing is very explicit. And then the other one is Little Birds Erotica by Anais. I think I grabbed this at some used book sale because I had heard of her, didn't really know much about her. It's not a very good book. That's all. We're closing in on final selections. This one I think I did like. I think I got this because I read Brideshead Revisited, and so I wanted to read another book by Evelyn Waugh. Evelyn. So I got this, and it was pretty funny, I think. An outrageously comic novel of the commercialization of death itself. Mr. Joyboy, he should have been in one of those last couple books. The Ultimate Embalmer and Amy Thanatogenous, crematorium cosmetician. Boy, this is a tongue twister. They find their romance complicated by the appearance of a young English poet named Dennis Barlow. This bizarre triangle is played out against an ironic and macabre backdrop, a full-service funeral home for Hollywood's departed greats called Whispering Glades, and a pet cemetery, Happier Hunting Ground, both final resting places for deceased loved ones. And last but not least, I found, this is an author I have read before. I've read some of these, but not all of them. And I found not one, not two, not three, but 6 Shorty September possible novels by Muriel Spark. We have The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, and then we have a bunch of novels in this omnibus. Loitering with Intent, The Girls of Slender Means, The Abbess of Crewe, The Bachelors, and The Ballad of Peckham. I know that I've read this one, and I think I've read Loitering with Intent and The Girls of Slender Means. And then I've also read, I know I read Memento Mori, and I don't know if I read anything else. So I have read some Muriel Spark, and she is kind of a queen of short novels. But I have a whole bunch of them right here at my disposal, and I have not exhausted the possibilities. So there you have it. Just a mere sprinkling of the hidden possibilities in my library. And probably this would work for every theme every month. What do you think? Which ones have you read? Let me know down below your comments, your thoughts. Most of these I don't have any plans to reread in the immediate future, but a couple of them I am intrigued that I have fond memories of, or some of those, maybe the Muriel Sparks that I haven't read. Some of them I can imagine circling back around to, but probably not this month because my dance card is very full. So I hope that you are having a great week and that you yourself have found some new or old excellent things to read for Shorty September. I will be back on Friday with Friday Reads. See you later. Bye-bye.